So you built this awesome app, and you're ready to start trying it on your iPhone. It works fine in the simulator, but now you want to do it on a real device. Unfortunately, as soon as you try and get your app running on a device, you run into all kinds of complicated problems. You're seeing words like provisioning profiles, and code signing, and certificates, and it's all getting very confusing, and you're wondering if you're ever going to get this app running on an actual device. This is a quick tutorial to get you to understand the three basic things that are happening in the background so you have a good mental framework for understanding how provisioning profiles work. You get these three things correct and you'll have a much better chance of getting your provisioning profiles working and also troubleshooting when there's problems with your provisioning profiles. So, let's get started. Provisioning profiles are Apple's way of keeping security of which apps are running on their devices. There are three things you need to get correct. First, you have to have the right permission. Not any developer can put apps on Apple devices, only registered developers can. The second thing you need to keep track of is, does your app have the right permission to run on a device? And finally, does your device have the permission to run the apps that you designate? Getting these three concepts firmly in your mind will be a great way for you to help debug problems when you run into them. Let's talk about the first concept in a little more detail. While you can use the iOS simulator for free and download Xcode for free to build your apps, to actually get your app running on an iOS device, somebody needs to pay $99 a year to join the iOS developer program and actually register as an iOS developer. Now you can do this one of two ways. If you're an individual working on your own projects, you can sign up as an individual and pay the $99 a year yourself. Or if you're working at a company, the company can get a team developer account, and that'll allow multiple people at the company to build for devices, and somebody at the company can manage the permissions of each member of that team. Either way, somebody has to pay that $99 a year to officially join the iOS developer program to get apps running on devices. So how does Xcode know that you actually paid the $99 and have the right to put apps on devices? Well, that's where a program called Keychain Access comes in. People use it to manage their usernames and passwords and credentials to certify that they are the person they say they are. In this case, you'll be using Keychain Access to set up a certificate that says, hey, I'm a registered developer and I have the right to put apps on devices. That's basically the role of Keychain Access and certificates in this role, to guarantee that you have the permissions you need to put apps on iOS devices. The second security checkpoint is ensuring that your app has permission to run on devices. Not any app can run on iOS devices. Apple security is very strict in this regard. Either an app has to be submitted to Apple through the official App Store approval process and then be available in the App Store, or if you're just a developer, you can get permission to run your apps on a limited number of devices, but you have to register that app through the iOS provisioning portal. To do this, each app has to have its own unique identifier, and this is called the bundle ID. It's usually in a reverse domain name format, so if I'm running mydomain.com, then my bundle ID will be com.mydomain.myapp. I'm going to register that bundle ID in the iOS provisioning portal under App IDs. Once I've done that, I should be good to go. But there's one thing to watch out for with this bundle identifier. You have to make sure that the bundle identifier that you use in Xcode is exactly the same as the bundle identifier that you use on the iOS provisioning portal. This means it's case sensitive, so all uppercases and lowercases have to match. Any spaces or hyphens or dashes that you use have to be identical between the Xcode and the provisioning portal. I've messed this up a few times and it causes problems. Make sure those are the same and you'll be good to go. So the final security checkpoint is making sure that your device has permission to run the apps you're developing. As a registered iOS developer, you're able to test your apps on up to 100 devices. But to do that, you're going to have to register those devices in the iOS provisioning portal. How do you do that? Well, each device has a unique identifying number. It's a 4-character string called the UDID number for the device. You're going to register each device in the iOS provisioning portal, same place where you registered your app IDs, and then you'll be ready to create your provisioning profiles. Provisioning profiles are a digital document that wrap all these concepts into one thing. When you're building your provisioning profile, one thing you're going to do is select the app ID of the app that you're currently wanting to test, and then you're going to select which devices that you're going to test this particular app on. And then finally, you're going to select which developer certificate you're going to use as the authority to build this app and test it on a device. With these three settings correct, you'll be able to create a provisioning profile that you can use to test your app on all the devices that you chose. So let's review the three things that provisioning profiles guarantee. First, provisioning profiles need to make sure that you are okay to run your apps on iOS devices, and that happens through setting your certificates in keychain access. Second, provisioning profiles make sure that your app is okay to run on iOS devices, and that happens by registering that bundle ID in the provisioning portal. Finally, you need to make sure that your device is okay to run the apps you're developing. You register your devices through the provisioning portal and then create a provisioning profile where you set your app ID, your developer certificate, and check the devices you want to test this app on. This has been a very high-level view of what happens with the provisioning profiles. In a future video, what we'll do is walk through this in detail and actually show you how to get this done.